Good afternoon, everyone. Hope you've all had a great day. Me, McEvoy, I'm stood in the Senedd right now. There's a debate in the chamber. They're debating the lockdown, Drakeford's lockdown. I'm not allowed to take part in the debate. I've been banned from speaking by the presiding officer. She's basically doing a job for the Labour government. They don't want awkward questions asked. So I'm up here and I'm saying what I'd like to say live on Facebook instead of in the Parliament. I'd say the whole lockdown, Drakeford's lockdown on Friday, has been introduced in an absolutely shambolic way. People, elected members of the Senedd, didn't know what was going on. You're supposed to make these decisions through the Parliament. It's being debated today. The decision is supposedly being taken, but we found out last week that they'd already taken the decision in private, and we go into another lockdown on Friday. People have only just come out of furlough and have returned to work. So for a week now, they're going to have to go back onto furlough with 80% of salaries paid. And what's going to happen then after just 1 week on furlough? They're going to go into the job support scheme then for the second week, which 2/3 of wages are paid, 66%. So it's an incredibly complicated situation, which the Labour government in Wales has taken everybody into without even working out exactly how it's going to be paid for. Now, small and medium-sized businesses are just going to get, for the 2 weeks, a £5,000 payment, a one-off. And if you look at the hospitality business and many places, they're losing huge revenue raises on Halloween, on bonfire night. And we're in a situation where businesses will go to the wall. They've said there's only going to be 2 weeks. I don't actually believe them. It's almost like a child doesn't want to go to bed, wants to go to bed at 9 o'clock. They're not going to say, let me go to bed at 9. They're going to say 10 more minutes, 15 more minutes. And what this government is doing right now, I think, is saying, give us 2 weeks lockdown. And what concerns me is that some way into the 2 weeks, they'll then say, well, we need another 2 weeks and another 2 weeks. And they're not really looking at the wider picture. I'm not seeing strong evidence to say that this is going to work. The World Health Organization, whose advice the government ignored back in March. I was in here downstairs in the chamber saying that we needed to test. Drakeford and the Labour government in Wales decided they knew better. And we know where that ended up. We had a very long lockdown, and we've eased up our lockdown. We're going to go back into another lockdown now, and all we're doing is delaying the inevitable. What really concerns me is the real and immediate impact on the mental health of people, because I think people are really struggling. The gyms are going to be closed, and I've been speaking to people whose training is a lifeline. And you can go to a gym and train safely. It can be done. There are outside businesses. There's the Corporation Yard in Canton I've been to. There's a place up in, I should remember the name, but I don't, up in the Vale in Barry. Outside restaurants, you're distanced, you're in the open air. Staff are masked. It's a safe environment. There are pubs who've made, and bars, huge efforts to make things safe. And if you go to Mocha, when I was there, the rules are enforced. So it's a safe environment. But all those businesses are going to have to close down for the next 2 weeks. My real concern is, are they going to open up afterwards? And I think too many businesses are not going to open up. And there is a cost there. What isn't being taken into account, because I don't think there's been a holistic approach to this and COVID. It's all very well just getting the R rate down for the virus stopping the amount of people going to hospital, trying to get the death rate down there. Of course we support that. Of course we want to do that. But what about the other parts of the equation? As I said about mental health, and I'm being made aware now of people in lockdown who have taken their own lives. I mean, it's a crucially serious matter and an emergency. I asked the government a question today, or put it in, and my question was about the support for mental health during the lockdown over the next 2 weeks. What will be done? What will be done to support people? If the support is being pulled away, in terms of support workers, in terms of the gyms being closed, then what is going to be done? How can people be helped? And I wasn't allowed to ask the question because we had again the presiding officer, Ellen Jones, basically the speaker, decided that she didn't want that question asked of the government. And there's a real democratic deficit in Wales where people like me, politicians like me, the Welsh Nation Party, we want to ask questions, we want to engage in debate so we can find the best answers and find the best way forward, and we're not being allowed to engage. And it's a real concern. We're in a situation now where I think we're going to have to live with the virus in the medium term, because I don't see a vaccine being produced overnight, which is going to be effective. I read yesterday in the Financial Times that only certain people in the population will get the vaccine anyway. Not everyone will. It won't be available for everyone when it comes, if it comes. And what I'm seeing here is short-term panic from a government, out of control almost. And on the sidelines, you've got Plaid Cymru, the little helpers in the Welsh Parliament, calling for things like curfews, so that nobody's allowed out after midnight. And they've talked about stopping the sale of alcohol after 6 p.m. I mean, where is the science? I mean, lots of the things that they're proposing are completely irrational. I was speaking to somebody earlier who, in the first week in November, will be back in school looking after children, and yet by law, she will not be able to see her own grandchildren. I mean, it just does not make sense. She'll be in school with other children will be mixing, and yet legally, outside of that school, she will not be able to see her own grandchildren. I mean, there are so many anomalies. The whole policy is panic, in my view, and there's not a long-term strategy. What we should be looking at is, right, this virus is here. It's now unlikely to go away, because what I find really frustrating is I voted for the lockdown in the beginning in March, and what I did expect was a proper lockdown. It didn't happen. The airports were open. People were coming in without being tested. Just a few weeks ago, we had a vote here, and the Labour Party and Plaid Cymru voted not to test people coming in through airports. I mean, okay, airport in Wales, really, in Cardiff, the one in Ynys doesn't take too many passengers, but people are still coming in. Test them. If you go to other countries in the world, people are tested. Until you're clear, you're in quarantine. Why didn't we do that? And there are so many things we didn't do. We allowed people to come in just by road from areas of high COVID incidents into, say, for example, in Llŷn Peninsula, where my in-laws are from. Lots of people coming in on holidays there in the summer, bringing the virus in with them. And so the lockdown really wasn't a lockdown. Many of us obeyed the rules, but ultimately it has not been successful. As soon as things have relaxed, then we see the re-emergence of the virus. That's going to happen. So we're going to have a lockdown now for another 2 weeks, huge cost economically, and at some point we're going to be back in the same situation. So what we need really are a set of policies whereby we can live medium term with this virus, and we need to protect certain categories of people. How do we do that? How do we enable people to go about their business in a safe environment? By simply closing everything down, that's not the answer. It's not the answer. But stopping people getting treatment and getting the scans they need for cancer, for example, that's not the answer. And what my fear is that with the actions of this Labour government in Wales, supported by Plaid Cymru, realistically, many more people are going to die for other reasons. And this is the most serious matter. One of the biggest scandals recently was the care homes, where people were leaving hospital and being put into care homes without being tested. Now, I remember asking the question on the Wednesday about testing and being told there was no need to do it, and then the policy changing on the Saturday after the Boris Johnson government in England changed policy. And that's the way that this whole thing has been run. It's been run just with change after change after change. So we don't even know where we are. I'm supposed to be a legislator, supposed to be voting on things, and I'm like, well, where are we now? What are we doing? What are the regulations? Change. What we need are set rules that are in place in the longer term. So, for example, if you're a business and we could bring in a new qualification, a new assessment, I don't know, call it COVID A-star, for example. So if, like what I talked about the corporation earlier, about the food outside, the distance, the masks on, the staff, the tray put in front of you and you take it off yourself, the hand sanitizer, the temperature check as you go in. I was in a cafe earlier where you had to sign in and there were pens where you could pick a pen up, sign in and put it in the used box for pens, so you're not even touching the pens that other people have used. These are all very sensible ways to go about our daily business. We need to be more culturally aware as well, because keeping our distance is important. That's the bell for the debate downstairs. I think it's probably finishing now, but we should be looking, as I said, medium term, enabling business to survive, enabling people to earn a living, because unless we get people back to work, unless we get the economy moving, I mean, poverty is a killer. Poverty is a killer. And people out there are under tremendous pressure now. It's okay for the politicians here with the salaries at the end of every month, okay? We're not affected by it financially. We may well be in May if people here are not re-elected, which I would encourage you to actually make sure happens, because the way that I see it, and I'll finish now, the way that I see it now is that you've got a Labour Party just doing what they want. They're not listening, they're not being open, they're not being transparent. I've put in a load of questions today, which I'll let people know what I've done on social media in terms of bed occupancy, in terms of cancer scans, in terms of the deaths from the flu, the deaths from COVID. There are all these things that we need to know, and we're not being told them. And you also have Plaid Cymru massively enthusiastic, embracing this lockdown, wanting Labour to go further, as I said, with curfews. I mean, there's a curfew at midnight, like Adam Price suggested, so we're all locked away in our homes at midnight. How is that going to stop the virus spreading? So if I venture outside and walk up and down in the street quietly by myself to get a bit of exercise after midnight, it could be against the law. Outrageous. Ridiculous. It's the same with the 10:30. 10 o'clock. Labour politicians in England are criticising the Johnson government, the Conservatives, for having this arbitrary cut-off of 10 o'clock. I mean, it's killed a lot of businesses. And where's the science? There is none. And what we need is to realise that there is a virus. It is very serious. It can kill anyone. That is a reality. But also the reality is that it's mainly affects different categories of people, and maybe the rest of the population who are in good health maybe need to get used to this, because there is no future in locking down continuously. There is no future. We're crashing the economy. We're going to make the NHS unworkable. Appointments are going through the roof. I mean, there are so many people waiting for appointments on the NHS now. 125,000 people in Wales, and what we need is a discussion and a strategy, which is sadly missing. So I'm going to be voting against the lockdown today, because I've not seen the evidence from the government to justify it. It's a panic measure. It's government doing something for the sake of it, so they can say that they're doing something. And I'm not supporting that. I'm not agreeing to this chaos in my name, and not in the name of the Welsh Nation Party either. So as a final thing, what I would say is that I think this crisis has shown how badly the UK is governed, how badly in particular Wales is governed. I think the Welsh government's done slightly better than the Johnson government in London, but that's not saying much. And I would just encourage everyone out there to get involved in politics. And I would say, don't leave it to politicians, because we're seeing now how inadequate the people in this Welsh Parliament are. They're so inadequate, and we need better people elected. Support the Welsh National Party, and let's help get people elected next year to make decisions in the interest of our communities, because I'm just not seeing that here. I mean, I'm just not seeing it. So I've said my piece on COVID, and I'll be publicising the questions that I've put in today, and I'm voting against the lockdown, okay? Not in my name. Diolch yn fawr.